Hey y'all, this is Wacy. Little edition of AC with Wacy. Gonna be going over so story time. Have a customer who has a house that was recently built. He's concerned about the HVAC and the sizing. He has spray foam on the home. It's a well-built home, fairly tight, and the humidity levels have been a concern. So I did a manual J on the house, found that both systems were oversized and they're both single speeds. So he's a little out of our area. So I told him to contact the original installer, which he did. And they came back with a solution of putting more single speed systems on there, which are still oversized according to Manual J. So we're going to travel out of area to take care of this customer, and because of the delicacy of the situation, I'm doing a write-up for him to explain why we're doing what we're doing, and his contractor's response was, we're in the country, that code doesn't apply to us. So I'm going to go over this as quickly as possible, but essentially the important thing to note here, aside from the application of the design and everything, is this is code adopted by the state of Texas as early as November of 2016. So this is statewide code. It does not matter if your county, city, whatever doesn't require inspections. It doesn't mean that it's not code. It just means it's not being inspected or enforced. It's still code. If you get mold in that house, you as an HVAC contractor are still liable for installing an improper system if you installed it and it was not code compliant. So that's not really a thing. I know that comes up a lot in conversations with other contractors. I pretty much bow out of the conversation a lot of the time, and if you've been informed of it and you still decide to disregard it, that's you. That's not me. So anyways, this is I'm going to go through real quick what I wrote and go from there. Okay, so I'm going to abbreviate some of this just because I don't feel like reading. This is a fairly long write-up, but I'll get the essence of it. Basically, the systems need changed in order to prevent humidity and mold buildup, and fresh air into the space is needed to be code compliant. Neither of the systems are compliant with state code and have the risk of constant short cycle and non-dehumidification of the space. So in essence, an air conditioner has to run a certain amount of time in order to sweat, in order to condensate, which is how the humidity is removed from your home. During the process of temperature exchange, the inside coil will sweat, which will dehumidify the home. If oversized, the unit short cycles due to dropping the temperature of the house too quickly. Essentially, you can drop the temperature on a house while not affecting the humidity if you pour enough cold air into the house, which is what will happen in this situation. So even if sized to peak load, so on a 100-degree day, it has more of a chance of sweating due to it having to run longer due to the high load. However, it is estimated that speed is only used on average around 15% of your year. That's your in peak load, around 15% of your year. So even if sized according to Manual J to the peak load, 85% of your year, your unit doesn't need that peak load. So basically, if you're using a single speed system that is running 100% all of the time, you are running peak load type cooling levels 100% of the time when your house only needs it 15% of the time. 20 years ago, this would not have been an issue due to poorer construction methods and material. The air in the house would have changed 2 or 3 times as much just due to air leakage. This is very true. Whether or not you're using spray foam, if you're using a zip board system or you're sheathing homes in general, that wasn't really common practice 20 years ago. You're using sheathing, you're using house wrap, you're using the zip system, you're using something that is a lot tighter than it would have been 20 years ago. Because of that, let's get back to that spot. Even without spray foam, most houses are much tighter due to better construction materials and practices. When you add spray foam, you multiply the amount of difference that makes. On top of making the house tighter, spray foam does not allow water vapor to travel back out of the encapsulated space, so any produced and not removed with the air conditioning ventilation system remains in the home. Oftentimes this humidity gets trapped in the attic as it leaks around lights, grills, all of that type of stuff. If you're not treating the humidity in the attic, it will often get up into the 70s and 80s. I read a lot of 80 to 90% attics. Just for reference, doing what I do and being who I am, I make sure I read a lot of attics. We read a lot of attics above 80%. If you have humidity over 60%, mold can grow. Essentially, mold needs a temperature range similar to what we're comfortable with in our homes. It needs moisture and it needs organic food source to grow. The organic food source is almost always present. So to ensure that there's no mold, you have to eliminate one of those 3. The organic food source is not really an option because you've always got sheetrock, you've got wood, you've got all of these things. So that's off the table. The temperature range. To get outside of the temperature range where mold can grow, you would be in such an extreme place that your house would not be comfortable. So that's not really an option. So the only real option to preventing mold is controlling humidity. Past the mold concern, wood will start absorbing water vapor at around 70%. So if your attic is sitting at 70% or higher, all of your wood material in your walls, ceiling joists, etc. will begin taking on that moisture, which can lead to early rotting and other issues inside of the material itself. Ignore the mold thing. Say you're, in whatever percentage of houses that don't get mold that are above 60%. Say you get lucky and you're in that. If your attic is sitting at 70-odd%, all of your stuff is going to be at risk for rotting and all of this different stuff. Sizing relevant code. I'm attaching his manual JD&S for reference. So the upstairs of the home, according to Manual J, requires about 1 ton. There is not a standard 1 ton ducted system. So we will be doing a 1.5 ton. It's as close as we can get to the upstairs load. Because of the exception in the code for variable speed equipment, it satisfies Manual S. A single speed 1.5 will not. The 2 ton that we'll be putting on the downstairs is again a little over the Manual S, but as close as we can come without getting under our peak load with the 1.5. And again, due to the variable speed exception, it does qualify and satisfy the Manual S condition. So on to the code. Code M1401.3, which is in the international, the 2015 International Code, adopted in Texas in November of 2016, so shortly after it was written. M1401.3, equipment and appliance sizing, heating and cooling equipment and appliances shall be sized in according to ACA Manual S or other approved sizing methodologies based on building loads calculated in accordance with ACCA Manual J or other approved heating and cooling calculation methodologies. I do not know of any other ACCA approved heating and cooling calculation methodologies. Just it's manual J or nothing, basically. The exception, heating and cooling equipment and appliance sizing shall not be limited to the capacities determined in accordance to ACCUA Manual S, where either of the following conditions apply. The specified equipment or appliance utilizes multi-stage technology or variable refrigerant flow technology, and the loads calculated in accordance with the approved heating and cooling calculation method are within range of the manufacturer's published capacities for that equipment or appliance. The specified equipment or appliance published capacities cannot satisfy both the total and sensible heat gains calculated in with the approved heating and cooling calculation methodology, and the next larger standard size unit is specified. So going back to the equipment that we're using, that's what we're doing. We're using variable speed equipment. We're slightly outside of manual S, but because it's variable speed, it passes. In reference to fresh air in the home, he has no fresh air coming into his home. I haven't seen a blower door. I don't know how tight it is, but I'm going to assume because it's spray foam and it's well built, he's probably under a 2, maybe a 2.5. In 2018, International Energy Code Compliance adopted in Texas mandates that all new homes, notice it does not say all homes under this certain sorry, I'm stumbling here, but it does not give a ventilation rate, a tightness, anything. It says all new homes must include a continuously operating mechanical ventilation system to maintain indoor air quality. Ventilation systems must provide fresh air intake and stale air exhaust. So most of the stale air exhaust on most construction is going to be your bath fans, your kitchen fan, all of that type of stuff. The way to satisfy this code all the way is to use something like an ERV that does both. But you can have your exhaust on your different rooms, that qualifies. So the incoming fresh air intake must operate continuously or cycle at least once every 4 hours. Manual override control is required for all systems. That means you have to be able to unplug it, you have to be able to shut it down if there is something wrong and it's causing a problem. These systems must be designed according to ASHRAE 62.2 2007 version, which sets minimum indoor ventilation rates for indoor air quality, minimum ventilation rates for Texas homes. You notice it says Texas homes. In Texas, we have several climate zones, so the climate zone thing can get a little confusing. They bypassed all that. They did home size by square footage and required ventilation rate. It does not specify the tightness. It specifies the square footage and a CFM. So 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, you need 45 CFM, 1,500 to 2,500, 60 CFM, 2,500 to 3,500, 75 CFM. If you're 3,500 plus, you have to have a minimum of 90. In reference, okay, so that's the end of that code. In reference to the humidity control of the encapsulated attic, I'm copying from the ACCA site in regards to industry standard, as there is not specific code that I am aware of in regards to the dehumidification of a encapsulated space. But I will tell you from the spray foam certification classes that I took, it is taught to always dehumidify attic space or any encapsulated area without a air conditioning system. So this is quote off of their website. Prior to 2004, one had to receive special approval in order to build an encapsulated attic, which is an unvented attic basically. Furthermore, explicit design guidance for HVAC-R systems was non-existent. Since then, requirements for the construction of encapsulated attics have been included in the International Residential Code and have been refined as different concerns were identified and addressed. There are no prohibitions on the construction of encapsulated attics in any region of the country, but the current requirements, 2012 International Residential Code, do include some Department of Energy Efficiency climate zone specific prescriptions related to building the thermal envelope, permissible vapor retarders, applications involving wood shingles or shakes, requirements for air permeable insulation, insulation R value. Some code officials have expressed concern regarding higher roof temperature and its effect on the roofing deck, shingles, shakes above an encapsulated attic. Solar Energy Center conducted a literature review dealing with encapsulated attics in hot and humid conditions. One of the topics researched was roof temperature effects. The report found I'm going to spare you some of this. Roof color and home location have a greater effect on the roof temperature. Obviously, if you're living in a hotter climate and you have a black roof, you are going to absorb more heat than a white roof in a hot climate. Peak shingle temperature with the encapsulated attic underneath when compared to one with a vented attic is about 7 degrees higher. So while your encapsulated attic is cooler than a normal attic, the average is 7 degrees. I find that hard to believe, to be honest. I think it's miles above 77 degrees difference on an encapsulated versus a normal, but that's what their study found. The temperature between the roof decking and insulation on the encapsulated attic roof was 23 degrees hotter for a vented attic roof. A 1.8 increase in mean annual temperature, which is lower than the peak temperature, equals a 3-month reduction in service life, blah, blah, blah. That's all about the shingles. So for a 20-year shingle, the reduction is approximately 6 weeks. So that means after 6 weeks, your 20-year shingles are going to start allowing more heat than before, but they're a 20-year shingle, they'll last. So at the end of 20 years, you're absorbing more heat than you were in year one. Again, basic common sense type stuff. So essentially what they're saying is your attic ventilation is not defensible for humidity control in hot, humid climates. So, again, in reference to this specific job, another thing that the HVAC contractor suggested to fix the humidity issue and the fresh air in the home is to ventilate the attic. He wanted to essentially put a pipe into the attic to allow it to breathe. Attic ventilation is not defensible for humidity control in hot, humid climate zones. And aside from that, from the insulation end, you're ruining the value of that spray foam encapsulation if you put a hole in your attic to vent it. So that means that you have to be addressing that attic some way other than ventilating the attic. Hence a dehumidifier. The other thing that a lot of high-end guys will do, Matt Risinger that hosts the Build Show, he will actually condition his attic spaces to keep them at a certain temperature and keep the humidity under control. In theory, very, very good. It boosts the efficiency of your ductwork, boosts the efficiency of your home, takes some of the load off your home, all of that stuff. It's a costly way to do it, so we use dehumidifiers most of the time. But basically, on this home, we're putting the humidifier in the attic. We're adding in ventilation in the home in accordance with the IECC code adopted in Texas 2018. And then we are changing the equipment to be sized according to Manual J and S in accordance with the international code going back, international code from 2015, which was adopted in Texas in 2016. I meant to dig into this farther. I believe the current state code is actually 2018. I know it changed in January of last year. I didn't have time to dig into that, so I pulled the old code, which is going back to 2015. So this is not new code. This is 9-year-old code. It didn't change. This year made it stricter, which means that all of this stuff is more relevant. But if your HVAC contractor, your builder, whoever is telling you that that code doesn't apply, this is a statewide code, not only a statewide code, but an international code. And this goes back almost 10 years. So there's that. All right, that's where I'm going to leave this video. So essentially, we're going back with variable speed equipment. We're ventilating the home to get some fresh air in there, and then we're going to dehumidify the attic space. This will alleviate the customer's concerns with humidity building in his attic and causing mold or wood problems, and alleviate that humidity in the house while putting some oxygen back in the house to keep the CO2 levels under control, which is why you're required to bring air in. Your house doesn't breathe like it did 20 years ago, even if you're not using spray foam. I guarantee you, if you do a blower door test on your home is tighter than you think it is. But anyways, that's what we're doing today. I figured it was worth a short video. Appreciate you stopping by. We'll catch you next time.